The kindest person in your life might be the most dangerous person you know. Psychologists call them dark empaths, people who understand your emotions perfectly and use that understanding against you. Right now, someone in your life could be reading you this well without you even noticing. Can you actually tell the difference between real care and calculated care? Most people can't, not until it's too late. I went through the actual research behind this, not TikTok guesses. So what you're about to hear is real psychology, not theory. So how does someone with real empathy end up being the one who hurts you the most? By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what separates a dark empath from an ordinary manipulator and 3 specific patterns you can actually catch in real time, not months later, once the damage is already done. Here's the part almost nobody explains correctly. The term dark empath didn't come from social media. It came from a 2021 study out of Nottingham Trent University, where researchers ran nearly 1,000 participants through personality assessments measuring both empathy and the dark triad traits, narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. What they found didn't fit the old model at all. Instead of one group of cold manipulators and one group of warm empathetic people, 4 distinct clusters emerged. There were the expected dark triad individuals, high on manipulation, low on empathy. There were typicals and empaths. But there was also a 4th group that shouldn't have existed under the old theory, people who scored high on both empathy and dark personality traits at the same time. That group is where the term comes from, and it's larger than most people assume. To understand why that combination is so dangerous, you need to know there are actually 2 different kinds of empathy, not one. Cognitive empathy is the ability to accurately read what someone else is thinking or feeling, essentially emotional pattern recognition. Affective empathy is the deeper layer, actually feeling something in response to their emotion. Most manipulators are weak in both. A dark empath is often strong in cognitive empathy, sometimes even stronger than emotionally healthy people, while treating affective empathy as optional, something they can dial up or down depending on what serves them. That's the mechanism. They're not guessing what you feel. They know. The only question is what they choose to do with that knowledge. That selective quality shows up in the research in an almost unsettling way. In studies on narcissism and empathy, researchers measured participants' physical responses, heart rate, skin conductance, while they simply watched other people describe painful experiences. Left to their own devices, narcissistic participants showed a flat, minimal physical response, similar to boredom. But the moment researchers instructed them to deliberately imagine themselves in the other person's position, their heart rate spiked, matching participants with no dark traits at all. The capacity for empathy hadn't disappeared. It had been sitting there the whole time, switched off by default, and switched on only when there was a reason to use it. That single detail should change how you interpret someone's warmth. The question isn't whether they can feel for you, it's whether feeling for you right now benefits them. So what does that actually look like in daily life? 3 patterns, and you've probably experienced at least one without naming it. The first is a compliment that lands with suspicious precision, not generic flattery, but something that hits exactly the insecurity you've never said out loud, or exactly the achievement you're proudest of and rarely get recognized for. It feels less like a compliment and more like being seen. That's what makes it effective. But watch what happens once you're no longer useful to them. In a conversation, a project, a favor, the warmth doesn't fade gradually the way it would with someone genuinely inconsistent. It cuts off almost immediately, like a light switch, because it was never really about you. It was targeted, and the target moved. The second pattern is comfort that isn't actually comfort. It's a transaction wearing comfort's clothes. Picture a co-worker or a boss who shows up exactly when you're overwhelmed, says precisely the right reassuring thing, maybe even covers for a mistake you made. It feels like support, but somehow, afterward, you find yourself staying late, taking on extra work, defending them in meetings, not because they asked, but because the emotional debt has quietly shifted onto you without a single explicit request. Researchers sometimes call this strategic reciprocity, generosity that's real in the moment, but never actually free. The third pattern, and the one people miss most often, is recovery speed. Genuine remorse tends tends to linger. A person who truly feels bad about hurting you usually can't fully return to normal right away. There's a stiffness, an awkwardness, a lingering discomfort that shows in how they act for at least a little while afterward. Picture a family member who says something cutting during an argument, then is laughing and joking 20 minutes later like nothing happened. That speed isn't emotional resilience. It's a sign that guilt was never really the point. Managing your reaction was. Think of it like the difference between a burglar and a locksmith. A burglar breaks the door, loud, clumsy, obvious the moment you see it. A locksmith doesn't need to break anything at all. They understand the internal mechanism of the lock so precisely that they can open it cleanly, quietly, and leave without a trace that they were ever inside. That's the real difference between an ordinary manipulator and a dark empathy. One forces their way in. The other was never locked out to begin with because they understood you too well to need force. Here's a second way to picture it. A card counter at a casino isn't cheating in the way most people imagine. They're not hiding cards or rigging a deck. They're simply using accurate, real-time information more precisely than everyone else at the table, and turning that precision into an advantage no one else can see happening. A dark empathy operates the same way in a relationship. They're not lying to your face in some cartoonish way. They're just reading the table, you, with an accuracy most people never develop, and quietly playing every hand to their own advantage. This is exactly why the pattern is more common and far more effective than people assume. It doesn't rely on cruelty, aggression, or obvious red flags, the things we're trained to watch for. It relies on precision and patience. You're not dealing with someone who fails to understand you. You're dealing with someone who may understand you better than people who genuinely love you do, and is applying that understanding selectively based on what benefits them in the moment. And here's what that actually costs you if you never learn to catch it. It's not just one bad relationship or one bad job, it's your ability to trust your own read of people going forward. You start explaining away the inconsistencies, the warmth that appears and disappears on its own schedule, the comfort that never quite feels free, the apologies that arrive too fast and too smoothly, because on the surface, this person seems more emotionally attuned than almost anyone else in your life. That confusion is exactly what keeps people stuck in these dynamics for years, rather than recognizing the pattern in weeks. So here's what we covered. Dark empaths aren't cold or robotic. They're effective because they genuinely understand what you feel. That's exactly what makes them harder to catch than an obvious manipulator, and why so many people don't see it until they're already attached. But knowing what a dark empath looks like doesn't protect you if you don't know how they actually pull you in the first. And here's what that actually costs you if you never learn to catch it. It's not just one bad relationship or one bad job, it's your ability to trust your own read of people going forward. You start explaining away the inconsistencies, the warmth that appears and disappears on its own schedule, the comfort that never quite feels free, the apologies that arrive too fast and too smoothly, because on the surface, this person seems more emotionally attuned than almost anyone else in your life. That confusion is exactly what keeps people stuck in these dynamics for years, rather than recognizing the pattern in weeks. So here's what we covered. Dark empaths aren't cold or robotic. They're effective because they genuinely understand what you feel. That's exactly what makes them harder to catch than an obvious manipulator, and why so many people don't see it until they're already attached. But knowing what a dark empath looks like doesn't protect you if you don't know how they actually pull you in the first place. That's exactly what I'm breaking down next. The tactics they use to hook you before you even realize it's happening.